All right, guys, so I saw this article and I thought I would react to it. This was 10 days ago. It says 20 cities that deserve an NBA expansion team, and then it goes through a literal list of 20 cities that could possibly get an NBA expansion franchise. I'm going to give my opinion on it. I'm going to give a percent chance each city has of getting a new team. And kind of just where the NBA is currently at when it comes to expansion. Are there any projects in the works? Let's get right into it. The first team that they do, the first city that they do mention is Seattle. And of course, this is going to be a top option for the NBA. Previously, they had the Supersonics. We know Seattle just got an NHL team, the Seattle Kraken. They got that arena, Climate Pledge Arena, completely revamped. It's ready for an NBA expansion team if it ends up happening. I would say right now, minimum 50-50 chance Seattle gets an NBA expansion team, but I would actually go probably even higher than that. Seattle is like the number one option based off of what they've been doing, based off of the NHL going there, the whole situation with the arena already being ready, and you can actually see renderings for what it would look like for a potential NBA team. But yes, definitely a top option there. Next, it's going to be Las Vegas. So this is kind of the other big option. Now, Las Vegas recently added an NFL team. It looks like they're going to be adding an MLB team. Is Las Vegas big enough to have four major sports franchises with basketball included? There is a project that's been on hold now for a while. It is a multi-billion-dollar potential retractable roof NBA arena / resort with a hotel, spa, and everything. And the reason it keeps getting put on hold is because the NBA right now is simply not ready to expand. It's going to be at least 3 or 4 years before it happens because they have, negotiations to go through in 2024. So really nothing's going to happen on that front. So right now the project is on hold, but I would say Vegas right now, you got to go at least a 40 or a 50% chance. If I had to pick between two cities that were going to get an NBA expansion team, it would very easily be Las Vegas and Seattle, far and away the two biggest favorites. Again, the thing with Seattle, they do have an arena that basically right now is ready for an NBA team. And then Las Vegas, they've already been planning a potential team with different futuristic arena renderings, possibly even getting the first retractable roof type NBA arena. I think the future of NBA arenas will be some version of natural light. I don't know if it'll come in through the roof. There are issues with sun glare and things like that, but I do think the stadiums that will be built in the 2030s will all have some form of like a window, or you see it with college basketball, something like that. They're going to make some type of acrylic glass where you're going to be able to kind of see outside, but it's not going to be any issues with the sun. The idea is you want the natural light into the stadium, or at least make it feel like it's coming in. We know the NFL, they've got their new futuristic roofs on SoFi and Allegiant Stadium that lets in some natural light and makes you feel more like you're outside. So I think Las Vegas certainly is a favorite. Next, it's Mexico City. So I've actually heard a few rumblings about Mexico City possibly being an option for an NBA expansion team. They did recently play there. The NBA had a few games in Mexico City, a few preseason games, maybe also a few summer league games, if I remember correctly. But Mexico City, it's going to be very hard. They have ridiculous altitude. The NBA and the players are already annoyed with the schedule, and they want more off days, and you've got teams resting players. Going to Mexico City, having to cross the border, I just don't think it's a very viable option at this point. But the biggest thing, again, it's the altitude. The altitude is crazy. It's way higher than Denver, I believe. And that's kind of the issue with the MLB expanding as well to Mexico City, is the crazy altitude. So I would say less than a 5% chance for Mexico City. Baltimore, they say Baltimore used to have an NBA team. I don't see Baltimore being an option. I know they have the Orioles, they have the Ravens. Both of those teams do receive relative good support. The Orioles have been horrible terrible recently, but when they're at least decent, Baltimore is like within the top 15 in attendance normally in the MLB, and then the Ravens always are supported really well by the fans. But I just don't see Baltimore as a legitimate option right now when it comes to the NBA. I would say less than a 5% chance. New Jersey possibly getting a team. So, we know New Jersey ended up going to Brooklyn. I don't see this happening. When they relocated in 2012, would they really go back? I would say less than a 5% chance going to New Jersey. There's simply better options, and there's always a reason you leave. It's like the idea of the MLB going back to Montreal. They left because the attendance was so bad. I don't see the purpose of going back. It's probably just going to end up being the same issue in the long run. Pittsburgh. So maybe Pittsburgh could be an under-the-radar team to get an NBA team just because, the Steelers, they've got great fan base support. The Pittsburgh Penguins, the NHL team. And then you do have the Pirates. Now, the Pirates do have some pretty rough attendance. So I would say, I think when it comes to Pittsburgh, it's maybe a little bit smaller when it comes to having 4 major professional sports teams. That's why I would put it a little bit lower. But I do think it could be a potential dark horse. I would still say probably less than 5% chance there. London, I would say less than a 0.1% chance. There's just zero way London. The NFL can't even do it. How would the NBA have a team fly back and forth in an 82-game schedule? It's impossible, and it's not going to happen. And you've got the time change and all that stuff. The NBA can barely even go to London for like a regular season series anyways. They have to bake in like 5 off days for the players. So there's just no way the NBA would go to London or have a team in London under any circumstances. You're much more likely to see the NFL maybe have some type of European wing, possibly happening in the 2030s. But that's a ways away, and that would require minimum 2 teams, probably 4 teams being based in Europe, because that could mitigate the travels. You could have those teams face each other and only have them travel to the States maybe 2 or 3 times, keep them in the States, have them play 3 or 4 away games, and it would be a little easier of a way to do it there. Next, you've got Nashville. Yeah, so Nashville's a really hot city right now. They've got a new NFL stadium on the way, multi-billion-dollar thing. It's going to be a fixed roof. It's very impressive. They've been in the news possibly as one of the overwhelming favorites to get an MLB expansion team. So Nashville, I would say, has maybe a 5 or a 10% chance. I would put them as kind of one of the dark horses for an NBA franchise, but really I don't see it happening. I think Nashville has invested so much into that new NFL stadium, roughly $2 billion. It's just not going to happen with Nashville. They have the Titans, they've got the Predators, and they've possibly got an MLB expansion team. I don't see an NBA one. There's just too much going on for Nashville to get an NBA team. Next, it's San Diego. So San Diego, I'm going to say very small chance they get an expansion team. San Diego almost feels the equivalent of like Orlando. It's just really laid back, and I don't think they would go there. There's better options. It's great weather, but remember, we saw San Diego lose the Chargers. So I don't see an NBA team going to San Diego. Tampa Bay, I would say there's no way. I think an NBA Tampa Bay team would be awesome. It would be hilarious. But for the NBA, it would not be hilarious. It would probably be very bad in terms of, fan interest and things like that. You've already got problems with Orlando. Just being in Florida, it tends to be a bit of a problem in terms of the overall attendance, just because there's a lot of things to do in Florida. It's very nice weather. Tampa Bay, they've got the issues with St. Petersburg and the Rays, and they're trying to fund that new stadium. That's step number 1, because they're currently trying to fend off the Rays possibly leaving, so I don't see them adding an NBA team. Cincinnati could be an under-the-radar option. They do have the Bengals, but I would still say probably lower than 5% chance when it comes to Cincy. They've also got the Reds, and the Reds do draw really well in terms of their attendance, when they're good. So I do have to give Cincinnati credit for that, but I don't see them getting an NBA expansion team, but they could be. They're maybe one of the more realistic dark horse options. And then I would say this is another one. So Louisville, Louisville has a really good college basketball team. They've actually got an arena that has a capacity that's bigger than most NBA arenas. I think the KFC Yum Center, believe it seats like 22,000 or something like that. So there's a pedigree here with Louisville loving basketball. I would say under the radar. I would say still maybe 5 or 10% chance, but there is a chance there maybe. Next, it is Kansas City. So the situation with Kansas City, they're kind of focusing on getting a new MLB stadium. I know they've pitched a few different things. I know they've pitched a few different renderings, possibly moving into the city, and I think they're probably focused on getting a new stadium for the Royals by 2026. You also have a situation with Arrowhead not getting any younger. If the Royals move, would they possibly make a new or maybe put a roof on Arrowhead? I think that's a conversation to have. I know Arrowhead is a great stadium. It's legendary. But that's something that might happen. So I don't think Kansas City's getting an NBA team. Jacksonville, there's no way. I mean, Jacksonville, their next step, just for them, they've got to find a way to upgrade TIAA Bank Field. It is a complete eyesore. It's a total joke of an NFL stadium. They're going to probably have to spend $750 million or $1 billion on stadium upgrades, or they're going to have to drop $1.5 billion on a new stadium. They're just not in the market for an NBA expansion team in the coming years. Montreal, I mean, this is less than a 0% chance here with Montreal. I don't even, there's just no NBA history. Says James Naismith was born in Canada. That's the reason it gives for going to Montreal. I think they're running out of cities at this point. Yeah, they're running out of cities. Next, St. Louis. St. Louis is really good in terms of their support for the Cardinals, but an NBA team. I mean, we just saw the Rams leave St. Louis, although part of that was they were really trying to go to LA really bad. They had a horrible stadium, the Edward Jones Dome. So I think St. Louis has a good fan base, but I don't see an NBA expansion team there. Honolulu, I think the time difference, the flight, they're going to want to keep the expansion teams in the lower 48. Honolulu is great. Maybe for like a one-off, one-game situation, neutral court, if you want to play a game down there. Beautiful weather, things like that, but I don't think they could support an NBA team for an 82-game season. Providence is just too small to have any professional team, in my opinion. Vancouver, I mean, my goodness, maybe they could have shown a more flattering photo of Vancouver than that. I don't know, but Vancouver, it's just not going to happen. There's not going to be I doubt there'll be another Canadian-based NBA team. If anything, if Canada wants another expansion team, it's going to have to be maybe a Toronto-based NFL team, although that's a long shot. But their best shot is probably like a Montreal getting an MLB team again in terms of that. And then Virginia Beach. So I like Virginia, the idea of Virginia, possibly getting a professional sports franchise. There was maybe a chance that they were going to get an MLB team. I don't think Virginia has a single professional sports franchise, so I would be open to this, honestly, see an NBA team go to Virginia Beach. I still don't think there's much of a chance of it. I think the overwhelming odds, if the NBA does expand, and this would be in like 2026 or 2027, it would be Vegas and it would be Seattle. And I'm guessing Vegas, not that it's confirmed, but I'd be very surprised if the NBA doesn't go to Vegas. Seattle, I wouldn't be shocked if they went somewhere else. If they do go somewhere else, you might see a Nashville, you might see a Louisville, but like I was saying, there's problems with both of those, especially Nashville. But those are just kind of some expansion options when it comes to the NBA. I do think for sure both of the expansion teams in the NBA will be in the lower 48. You're not going to see Honolulu. You're not going to see a team in Canada. You're not going to see a team in London, or anywhere. MLB and NFL, it's a little bit different. They do tend to look towards other places. But with the NBA, I don't see it. So that's just my opinion on the current expansion, looking at some of the cities. A city that was not mentioned, I mean, I'm sure there's a few different ones, but a place like Columbus, I could see possibly getting an NBA expansion team because they really only have the Blue Jackets and they are a bigger city. I know they also have Ohio State, but it wouldn't surprise me. I'm surprised Columbus was not mentioned in here, but they mentioned places like Vancouver. I don't know. Maybe they just randomly asked like Chat GPT to throw together a bunch of cities and just talked about them. Either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.